Hi, this is Dr. Steve Horowitz, CEO of TeamSafeSports. What I'd like to talk to you about today is safety, because that's our focus with youth sports. But really, I'm going to talk to you father to father, not healthcare professional, just dad to dad, dad to parent. Our son plays youth sports, and we go watch his games and practices. And when he was playing games this past spring in a league, I was out on the field every weekend. I was there as Hayden's dad, but I was out on the field every weekend because there was an incident. And this is very disturbing because there were no healthcare professionals available. So what I do is I bring a very, very simple first aid kit with me, and I bring it in a fanny pack. This is not a wilderness first aid kit. It's some very simple supplies which I want to show you how to put together. So we're going to take a look at the first aid kit right over here. And we have an emergency trauma bandage. I sure hope we never need to do that, but that is for some really terrible, significant bleeding. The next thing we have here is a powder that's called Bleed Stop. If you have some bleeding and it won't stop, this will help clot it. It's pretty amazing stuff. Very, very handy to have if you have a bad scrape, or for instance, if you have a scalp that's bleeding, this can really help clot things more quickly. This is a pocket mask. If you're going to decide to do CPR and you want to do the breathing part's up to you, but this pocket mask will save you. You know, even the nicest people can have tuberculosis, hepatitis, herpes, etc. So if you do choose to do the breathing, better to use this than to do direct mouth to mouth. The next thing is to have some handy gauze pads, at least 3 by 3 inch, to clean up some bleeding. That with some good gloves. Really important to have good quality gloves that won't rip when you put them on, that will fit your hands. Have some good Band-Aids. You don't need a ton of Band-Aids. Just have a couple of good Band-Aids around. And then the rolled gauze is really good, because if you have some significant bleeding and you use the gauze pads to stop it, you can just keep the gauze pad on the bleeding and roll it right up with some rolled gauze. Here we have some triple antibiotic ointment. Very handy to have. We have an emergency blanket that rolls out. It looks really teeny, but it rolls out. It can be quite effective to prevent shock. I sure hope you don't need this. This is a tourniquet, probably really not necessary in just a local first aid kit. Here we have some ACE bandages, which frankly we'll just use really to hold ice to the injured area, and I'm going to show you how to roll an ice bag in a second. Then I like to bring a little reverse osmosis water, just in a spray bottle, so I can just quickly spray. And I also made my own bottle up of some hydrogen peroxide, so I can clean the area and quickly spray. The last thing I always bring is a nice igloo cooler. I can fill this up. I can put ice in a bag. And just a little tip that I learned from an athletic trainer many, many years ago. When you tie the bag, don't tie the knot close to the bottom. Tie the bag so it's a couple of inches above, like this, and then the ice will spread out and go over the area. And then what we frequently do is put it in another bag just so it won't leak too much. And I usually make about a half a dozen of those bags. Oh, and the last thing I forgot, very important, is a good pair of scissors. Because if we need to cut some clothing off, a good athletic training pair of scissors. Notice the dulled end, so if I have to go in, I don't hit the skin and tear the skin. I can just slide in and cut any clothing off very, very, very easily. Last couple of things. You really need to ask about 2 things. Number 1, does the fields that the games are being played on, that the practices are held at, do they have an AED? An automated external defibrillator. If they don't, please contact us. We can get you set up, and you can have one for a donation. In other words, it will be donated to you. You don't have to donate to the organization. Same thing for an ice bath. If it's hot, this time of year, we're filming this in the summer here in Texas. If it's hot, you really need to have an ice bath. Somebody needs to be responsible for bringing quite a bit of ice, much more than what's in this cooler, quite a bit of ice, and have an ice bath, because if there is a heat emergency, the best thing you can do is put the athlete in the ice bath. We can also help you get one of those donated as well. So please, parents, think about this. It's very, very important. Think about the fact, does your organization have an emergency action plan, have a safety plan? The other thing that you need, it would be really handy, I am going to give a plug for TeamSafeSports. Does your organization have a way to have the entire roster so the coach has it on his or her phone? So you have the emergency contacts of each athlete right there. So you have the emergency medical information. Does that athlete need an EpiPen? What is an EpiPen? How do you use an EpiPen? Do they need an inhaler? Do they have diabetes? Do they have sickle cell trait? Have they had a concussion? Do they have prior concussions? What's the remove from play, return to play strategy? Can that be tracked step by step? If it is hot, is the temperature being recorded? The heat index being recorded? Is attendance being taken at each practice so we know which child is there? So this is a safety system that will A, protect the athlete, B, give you peace of mind, because coaches will have proper training, because all the education is included in the platform. And number 3, organizations, do you have a risk management strategy? It's very, very important. If that child needs an EpiPen, do you have that documented? Has the parent given the coach consent to hold that EpiPen? Because if the athlete is 8 years old, it might be advisable for the coach to have the EpiPen. It's 2019. Many parents work. 2 parents work. They may be at the games, but not necessarily at the practices. So have a safety system. Advocate for athletic trainers at your events. But the reality is, most of you will not have athletic trainers at the events, so you need some type of preparation protocol. Here's a simple way to do it. Thank you very much. Be safe.